Here's the latest on what's been happening down at the Haverford Road development project site. Now, as you'll recall, the project's been designated a PA DEP Act 2 land recycling program because of the oil contamination that was uncovered during excavation, where 7 new homes are being built on this site. If you have any questions or concerns about what's happening at that project site, you should get in touch with Rebecca Flannery, who is the geologic specialist. She's the DEP site coordinator for the project, and I'm putting her phone number and email address up here on screen so that you can have it conveniently. Now, last week, local residents emailed the Haverford 7 show with some video clips showing that earth was being loaded from the Haverford Road work site into dump trucks and transported off the site. This got people's attention because it was their understanding that nothing was supposed to be leaving that site unless test results came back from DEP and that a remediation plan had been signed off on by DEP. Residents followed one truck to see where the dirt was going, and they videotaped potentially contaminated soil being used as fill on another job site over in the 5th Ward of Haverford Township. This was a township contract site granted to the same contractor that happens to be working at the Haverford Road site, and this is over on Moreland and Deer Roads just off College Avenue. The following day, another truck full of Haverford Road soil was followed by a local resident, and this truck was observed dumping soil on township property as well. And this was over at the township garage back behind Barnaby's off Westchester Pike. Clearly, this raised some serious concerns. The contractor that's doing private excavation work over at Haverford Road site, it's the same contractor that's been used repeatedly by Haverford Township for projects. Now, it's probably pretty common for fill soil to be used from one job site and then used on another job site just for the sake of convenience, but not when that soil is contaminated and not when it's under the supervision of PA DEP. Now, let's be clear. We don't know that anything inappropriate actually happened here. We don't know whether the soil in question was tested and found to be free from contamination. We don't know if the contractor had permission to use that fill on these other job sites. We don't know why the soil was being deposited at a township maintenance yard. I'm going to say that therein lies the real problem. We don't know. And the reason for this not knowing is that we have some serious communication problems going on here. At the last Board of Commissioners meeting, several commissioners made a very strong point that the township has no authority over what's happening at the Haverford Road site because it's under the jurisdiction of DEP. Now, if that's the case, then who gave the okay for the soil to be used on township projects? And how could that authority be granted if the township has no jurisdiction over what's happening at the job site? It seems pretty unlikely that DEP had anything to say about work that's being done on township jobs. You get my point, right? Who is talking to whom and what's really going on? And when local residents are not being informed on a regular basis, that lack of information, it pushes people to try to get their own answers. And then we're all following each other around with video cameras trying to get the scoop. So at a recent meeting last week, I had the opportunity to speak with Representative Greg Vitale, and I invited him to pass on any information that his office was getting from DEP over to here so that we can put it out on the Haverford 7 show so that local residents are in the loop and they're as informed as possible. True to his word, the next day I got an email from Representative Vitale's secretary forwarding to me the complete email from Patrick Patterson, who's the local government liaison for DEP. And in that email, Mr. Patterson reports that he and Rebecca Flannery visited the Haverford Road project site. They toured it along with Dave Martin, who's the project manager for the developer, and Kevin Conaway, who's a contractor with Kelcon. And there was also an environmental consultant there, who I believe is the one that's been hired by the developer. So after touring the site, they got into a discussion about these emails and videos about the soil being removed from the Haverford Road site and deposited at township locations. In that email, Mr. Patterson reports that they learned from the excavation contractor, Premier Contract, that it was being unknowingly moved, which is a little confusing to me. How do you unknowingly move earth, or did they just mean that it was unknown to the people that are in charge? Patterson goes on to report that when the township learned about this from local residents, they had Premier remove the soil from the township project site and return it to the Haverford Road site. Here's what's really troubling about all of this. If a local resident hadn't just happened to notice a truck being loaded with dirt leaving the site, and if that resident hadn't taken it upon themselves to hop in their car and follow the truck, no one would know that potentially contaminated soil was being used at other township sites. The residents around Deer and Morley Road project there, they wouldn't know that their kids might be playing in contaminated ground. whose job is it to monitor the ground, what's going on at that contaminated soil site? The commissioners have made it pretty clear that the township's not responsible. They have said that DEP is clearly officially in charge of seeing that the remediation is properly done by the developer's contractors. Now, personally, I don't really care whether the commissioners are technically correct or not about having jurisdiction. How about simply caring about what's going on that could be adversely impacting the health and well-being of local residents? My hat goes off to two commissioners, D'Amelio and Connell. I invite you to watch the June commissioners meeting and see that they rise to the occasion and they propose coming down in person to the Haverford Road site and see firsthand what's going on. Gentlemen, we thank you. This would seem to be the correct response when your residents come to you asking for help on a project that was given full approval by the township. Interesting that this project lives right in the heart of the 7th Ward. Mr. D'Amelio, he represents the 1st Ward. Mr. Connell, he represents the 8th Ward, yet they seem to care about the residents of the 7th Ward. Now, I invite you again to watch the video and observe the response of 7th Ward Commissioner McGarity. That is to say, observe that he has no response, not one word. And true to their word, Commissioners D'Amelio and Connell did come down. They met with local 7th Ward residents. They toured the site. They smelled what these residents have been complaining about. Guess who did not come down with them? If you said 7th Ward Commissioner James McGarity, you'd be correct. You win the prize. Is no one watching? Is this really all done on faith? The township trusts that DEP will handle it. DEP trusts that the developer is handling it. The developer trusts that the contractors they hire are handling it. That's how this is done? This project sits right in the heart of the 7th Ward. Jimmy McGarity, for 24 years now, has been entrusted with the job of representing the residents of the 7th Ward on the Board of Commissioners. At the last Board of Commissioners meeting, several local residents who are directly impacted by this project spoke out about their concerns. They directly confronted Mr. McGarity about his lack of concern and his failure to directly respond to the phone calls they made to him asking for help when diesel fuel fumes were floating into their homes. How did Mr. McGarity respond to this direct confrontation? Well, you can see it. He said not one word. And watch the replay of the meeting. You'll see that while one resident is trying to address him, he actually gets up and leaves the room to take a cell phone call. This resident was literally left speechless at the podium. It was disrespectful, to say the least. But there was one particular moment when Mr. McGarity did speak up. It was later in the meeting when Premier Concrete, yes, the same contractor working at the Haverford Road site, the same contractor moving the soil from the contaminated property over to these other township job sites, was granted yet another contract for yet another township project. Mr. McGarity speaks up clearly and makes sure that we all know that this is, quote, a very good contractor, end quote. Perhaps they are. Perhaps they really are. But what is Mr. McGarity's relationship with this contractor, and why does he appear to be more supportive of a contractor than he is concerned about his own residents, his own constituents, the people that he was elected to represent? What's up with that? Well, that's the news for now. We'll keep you posted as further details become available. Please leave your comments and reactions here and on our Facebook page. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how information gets shared or fails to get shared on the issues that matter most to you.